At the southern tip of the African continent lies the beautiful country of South Africa. Thanks to resource-rich land, South Africa has long been a destination for groups of people looking to take advantage of its fertile countryside. For centuries, native tribes like the Zulus moved in from Central Africa, followed later by Dutch farmers known as the Boers. And eventually, the British brought the region under their great empire. Today, South Africa is an independent nation, and like all countries with diverse populations, it has faced many racially based challenges. However, the history of racial prejudice and discrimination in South Africa is uniquely dark and especially sinister. For decades, the government has attempted to make things better, but despite their efforts, little progress has been made, and the attempts have often even made things worse. This is Lwazi. He lives near the city of Durban with his parents Magala and Desiree and his older brother Adan. Lwazi is a good student and captain of his school's rugby team. Not long ago, he was extremely close to his big brother, but their relationship began to strain when Adan dropped out of high school. And thanks to his new obsession with political issues, the brothers are now as divided as their nation. Like most of South Africa, Durban is divided by racial lines. All of Lwazi's neighbors and classmates are black, and until recently, all of his rugby teammates were too. He knows that life for most South African whites is very different from his. In white parts of the area, there is less crime. Stores are nicer, and schools are much cleaner and more modern. His racially segregated world is tough, but it's all that Lwazi has ever known. For older South Africans, like his parents, today's segregation is especially heartbreaking because life wasn't supposed to be like this. Things were supposed to change. Back in 1948, after generations of racial conflict, South Africa's white-only government created a system of rules called apartheid that separated citizens by race. Apartheid forced black South Africans to live separately from whites and under poor living conditions. It also ensured that even though the population of white South Africans was much smaller than blacks, whites would have all political power and control the access to quality education and professional jobs. Thanks to international pressure and influence from leaders like Nelson Mandela, South Africa's evil apartheid system was outlawed during the early 1990s, and the country was filled with hope. Mandela was elected the nation's first black president, and the government began efforts to make South Africa more equal. To heal the nation's wounds, rules were created to favor black South Africans, and a percentage of all jobs were required to be filled by blacks. Today, South Africa not only remains divided racially, but 1/3 of its adults can't find jobs. And the country's roads, buildings, and power grid are crumbling and failing. Some people, like Magala, think having different rules for blacks and whites and hiring because of skin color and not skills is the reason the country hasn't progressed. People like Adan, however, blame white South Africans for the nation's problems and believe racism remains the reason so many blacks have remained in poverty. Lwazi hasn't always known which side of the argument to take, but thanks to rugby, and specifically a new teammate, he now knows the truth. Rugby is one of South Africa's most popular sports. It's rough and physical, but that's why Lwazi loves it. With speed and strength, Lwazi is a top player and a leader on his team. However, a few months back, his leadership was tested with the addition of a new player named Ethan. Talent wasn't the issue. The new kid had strength and skill that rivaled Lwazi's. But the thing about Ethan that made his arrival cause such a stir was that he was white. During Ethan's first practice, he faced hisses, taunts, and even insults, but not from Lwazi. For the first half of practice, the team captain could only wonder, why on earth would this white kid join our team? But then once he watched him play for a while, Lwazi's thoughts immediately shifted to, this crazy white kid is going to help us win! Sure enough, Ethan was a game changer, and the team warmed to him as he helped them bring success. One day, after practice, Lwazi asked his new teammate why he wanted to join a team with all black players. Ethan shrugged his shoulders and said he just wanted to play on a good team and win matches. Lwazi nodded in agreement. And Ethan went on to tell him about his family and how life was living on the white side of town. Lwazi was shocked to hear that not all white people were rich. Many, like Ethan's family, had faced hardship, and large numbers were leaving the country because of safety fears. Walking home that night, Lwazi wished he could talk to his older brother about Ethan. He wanted to tell him all the things he had learned about white South Africans. But Lwazi had no idea when a conversation like that would be possible. Adan had recently left home and hadn't been heard from since. He had gotten involved with a political group that blamed whites, specifically farmers and landowners, for all the country's problems. The group has had hate-filled protests and even been responsible for a number of farm burnings. "Hurry!" Magala yelled to Lwazi while handing him a flashlight. "I think your friend could be in trouble." Chaos had erupted throughout the country. The power in Lwazi's neighborhood had been out for hours, but there were rumors of widespread looting and violence. Lwazi's dad told him that local police were overwhelmed and had asked for volunteers to help protect Ethan's neighborhood. A group including Lwazi, his father, and many of his rugby teammates gathered at Ethan's neighborhood just in time to head off a mob of young men looking for trouble. Lwazi's group joined Ethan and his family at the neighborhood entry and braced for conflict. The oncoming mob made their way closer, but then stopped. One young man emerged to the front, and his eyes were focused on Lwazi. It was Adan, and when his eyes locked with his little brother's, he yelled out, "What are you doing here?" Lwazi froze, and his breathing stopped. Adan continued, pointing to Ethan, who was standing next to his younger brother. "Why are you defending him?" he growled. "You know what the whites have done to us." Lwazi responded, "Apartheid ended a long time ago, brother. He's a great rugby player, and he's my friend." The proclamation hit Adan like a punch, and he made his move. Big Brother lunged at Ethan with all his might, but with cat-like reflexes, Lwazi dove between them. The two brothers collided in midair and began wrestling once they returned to the ground. Both sides of the conflict watched as the brothers battled, but within seconds, sirens began blaring and flashing lights filled the sky. The police were on the scene, and the violent mob, including Adan, quickly scattered away. The nationwide riots ended, and Lwazi was left with mixed emotions. His brother hasn't been seen since the night of their fight, and he knows lots of work will need to be done to repair their relationship. Lwazi also knows many repairs are needed to fix his country. The efforts tried, like rewarding people for their skin color and not ability, have failed and are leading to South Africa's destruction. Thanks to getting to know Ethan, Lwazi understands what matters is having the skills required to do a job well. It wasn't an easy lesson to learn, but because of it, he has a new friend, and his rugby team is thriving. And if South Africa can learn to value its people's talents and abilities above skin color, it can thrive too.